Hello everyone and welcome back to Coach Craig Sports. Today is Monday, so that means it's going to be the top 5 performers. So this is going to be the video that I do every single week where I go over the top 5 quarterbacks, top 5 running backs, top 5 wide receivers, and top 5 tight ends from the previous week. This video does not include Monday Night Football, obviously, since I am recording on Monday morning. And just so it's clear, the points are based off a 6-point per passing touchdown leagues, pretty standard scoring for the quarterbacks otherwise, and then PPR scoring for all the other positions. But with that being said, we're going to get into it. So essentially, I'll talk through each of the 5 guys. I got some other notable performances as well. Based on the position, there may be more of those guys. Some positions might have less of those guys. It also varies week to week. And then I just kind of go through, let you know my thoughts on the players overall, and if there's a trend continuing going forward. But we're going to start off with the quarterback position. We got Kyler Murray, 289 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, only 20 rushing yards, which is a little surprising for Kyler, who is a pretty mobile quarterback, and 1 rushing touchdown. He ended up with 41.56 points, which is obviously a great week. Kyler Murray, pretty much a top 5 quarterback consensus going into the year, and I think that's something that's going to continue throughout the year. And then we had a surprise massive performance from Jameis Winston against the Green Bay Packers. Everybody thought the Packers were going to win this game, or it was going to be a lot closer game. Ended up being a landslide in the Saints' favor. Jameis Winston, he only threw for 148 yards. They often played on a short field. They were pretty effective otherwise, so that he didn't really have to throw for a lot of yards. He ended up with 5 passing touchdowns, which is great. No interceptions, which is very key for Jameis Winston as well. And 37 rushing yards, and he actually looked pretty good while he was running the ball. So he ended up with 39.62 fantasy points. Overall, I think Jameis Winston, he's probably a guy that you can stream week to week if you need to in favorable matchups. Just keep an eye out on him. Definitely have him rostered. I believe he is one of the guys I mentioned in waivers last week as well. Then in the number 3 spot, we got Patrick Mahomes, arguably the best quarterback there is in the NFL right now. 337 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 18 rushing yards, and 1 rushing touchdown. So 39.28 points is what he ended up with. Patrick Mahomes is a guy that will be on this list time in and time out throughout the season, so we don't have to talk about him too much. Everybody knows who Patrick Mahomes is at this point in time. Tom Brady. We saw him rock out on Thursday night with 379 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, both of which you can't really blame him too much, because the first one was a tip ball that Leonard Fournette should have grabbed on a screen pass, then got picked off. And then the second one was just a Hail Mary before halftime, so you can't really fault that. I don't really count those ones as interceptions too much myself personally. But they still count for negative fantasy points, so just keep that in mind. Tom Brady did not run the ball at all, so he obviously had 0 rushing yards. 35.16 points, so that puts him in the number 4 spot for the week. Tom Brady is a guy that's pretty much going to be on, he's going to be around that top 10 pretty much every single week. He's going to have weeks where he's in that top 5. So he's definitely somebody that if you have in your lineup, you're going to be playing more often than not. Then last but not least, we got Mr. Russell Wilson. Maybe this was a little bit of Mr. Unlimited. Not quite as many passing yards this week. 254 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and chipped in with 9 rushing yards on the ground. 35.06 fantasy points. You don't have to say too much about Russell Wilson. We know what his upside is, what he can do, and he's usually hot to start off the season. So he's a guy that you're probably going to want in your lineup more often than not as well. Couple other notable performances that we do have. Jared Goff with the Detroit Lions had a nice little debut there, minus a pick 6. A lot of those points came in garbage time. Maybe he does that throughout the season, but it's just not something that I would bet on. Jalen Hurts, who was essentially a top 12 quarterback pick in most fantasy drafts, looked very good this week. I know it was against the Atlanta Falcons defense, so we just got to take that with a grain of salt, but still a very promising start to the season. Dak Prescott and Matthew Stafford, they both look good in prime time. Those are 2 quarterbacks that should be started more often than not as well, so you don't have to say too much else about them. Next, we move over to the running back position, and we got Christian McCaffrey taking over the top spot. He was the first running back drafted in pretty much every fantasy football draft. 21 carries, 98 yards, 9 receptions, and 89 yards. So you'll see here, he did not even score a touchdown, and he was still the top running back on the week. 27.7 points. This is what Christian McCaffrey does for you in PPR leagues. He can even not score a touchdown, and he's still the top running back in the week. It's almost like a cheat code. Then in second place, we had Joe Mixon, who I know a lot of people like to, smash on Joe Mixon's not that good. Oh, he's always hurt, all that stuff. You'll hear it over and over again if you're on Twitter for fantasy football. You might even hear it in some of the community not on Twitter as well. Maybe if you're in a Facebook group or anything like that. So Joe Mixon had 29 carries, 127 yards, 1 rushing touchdown. He looked very good running the ball. He looked healthy. He had 4 receptions for 23 yards, so obviously there's some upside there in the passing game as well. Ended up with 25 total points, so Joe Mixon's a guy that you're going to want in your lineup more often than not, and the Cincinnati team is still committed to running the ball with him. Then probably the biggest surprise for the top 5 for the week was Jamal Williams. Or maybe I should say the biggest surprise is 2 Detroit Lions running backs ended up here, but we'll go with Jamal Williams first. He had 9 carries, 54 yards, 1 rushing touchdown, 8 receptions for 56 yards, 25 points overall. So very, very solid day. Just keep in mind here, he only played on about a third of snaps. DeAndre Swift played on about 2/3 of snaps. So it's probably not a repeatable performance, but maybe a guy that could warrant some flex play consideration going forward. Then we have DeAndre Swift. And if you guys follow me, you probably know that I've been saying don't bench DeAndre Swift. He's too good. And there's people that were benching him last week, and he had 24.4 points. He had 11 carries for 39 yards, 8 receptions for 65 yards, and 1 touchdown. I do apologize there. I do realize that I put the 8, not the receptions, down for him for some reason. That is my mistake. But DeAndre Swift, limited role in this game was still awesome. DeAndre Swift's a running back that you should essentially be playing every week. He definitely has some pretty high upside with this Detroit Lions team in its current state as long as he stays healthy. Then we got Nick Chubb taking up the number 5 spot, 15 carries, 83 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did have 1 fumble that he lost, 2 receptions for 18 yards, so he ended up with 22.1 points. Another solid week for Nick Chubb. You expect to see his name up here more often than not. A couple other notable performances that we did have was David Montgomery last night on Sunday Night Football, over 100 yards, a touchdown. The only thing I'll say about him is he only had 1 reception in that game, so we'll see if that changes going forward or not. Elijah Mitchell over 100 yards after Raheem Mostert got hurt, and a rushing touchdown. We'll see if Trey Sermon factors in more next week if he is active. And then Melvin Gordon had a nice 70-yard run, so he had a solid day as well. And for David Montgomery, he's a guy that you're probably going to be putting in your lineup just based on where you drafted him pretty much every single week. Elijah Mitchell, just keep an eye out on him. If he's on there on waivers, go out and grab him. I'll be doing the waiver wire episode tomorrow anyways, so be talking about him some. And then Melvin Gordon, he's a decent flex play at this point in time. He outplayed Javonte Williams yesterday, so that definitely counts for something. Then wide receivers, it was a great day for wide receivers overall. But the top guy on the slate was from Thursday night, and it was Amari Cooper. 16 targets, 13 receptions, 139 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He had 38.9 points, so once again, Amari Cooper's looking really nice. Dak Prescott being back definitely helped him out quite a bit. Tyreek Hill, 15 targets, 11 receptions, 197 yards, 1 touchdown, and then he also had a carry for 4 yards. 37.1 points. It's Tyreek Hill. We know essentially what we're going to get out of him. We're going to have these top 5 weeks more often than not. Number 3 was actually Deebo Samuel. He had 12 targets, 9 receptions, 189 yards, and 1 touchdown. He had a very big touchdown that really put him over the edge, 31.9 points. Deebo Samuel has been somebody I'm not on this season. I think if you have him right now, this is the perfect time to try to trade him for a better player. Brandon Ayuk was limited in this game. Rumors of a hamstring injury, kind of lingering. Rumors of him potentially missing curfew. So he wasn't really out there. He only ran, I believe, 15 routes in this game. So that could be a big factor in Deebo Samuel playing well in this game. And it was against the Detroit Lions, so you got to take that with a grain of salt as well. Then we had Adam Thielen, who was somebody I was kind of hyping up this week, honestly, if you watched the point after on Friday. He had 10 targets, 9 receptions, 92 yards, and 2 touchdowns. 30.2 points. And, Adam Thielen, he looks to be that red zone guy once again. Irv Smith's not around, so I don't expect a big drop-off in his production from last season. Even though everybody kind of wants to write it there. He's 31 years old. Everybody wants to write him off because he's still a good wide receiver. Then last but not least for the top 5 is Corey Davis. 7 targets, 5 receptions, 97 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Pretty slow start for him and Zach Wilson, but they really turned it on late with those 2 touchdowns. So he ended up with 26.7 fantasy points. That was a typo there. I did forget to change it there. Still working with this new format, so there is going to be mistakes every once in a while, but week after week 1, it should all be good. Then some other notable performances. DeAndre Hopkins with his 2 touchdowns looked very, very good against the Tennessee Titans. Tyler Lockett with his 2 touchdowns also looked very good. Antonio Brown, who looks like a viable flex play moving forward. Christian Kirk, popping back on the map when everybody wants to write him off. He had 2 touchdowns in this game. And he's a guy last year. He looked pretty good at times. Then Kyler Murray had that shoulder injury, and he just kind of vanished because Kyler wasn't throwing the deep ball. So maybe he's a potential waiver wire guy. We'll just have to see. Zach Pascal, another guy with 2 touchdowns. And as long as T.Y. Hilton's out, he should be getting some solid run. He might be another guy to take a look at. Jamar Chase over 100 yards and a touchdown. And then Brandon Cooks over 100 yards for the Texans, even though everybody kind of said the Texans aren't that good this year. Brandon Cooks is still going to be a viable player. Then last but not least, for my top 5 list, we have the tight ends. And I'll say this. First of all, this was not a very good week for tight ends. The top 5 you see here are the top 5, and after that, it's really, really messy. That's why there is no other notable performances list down below, because there was no other guys really worth mentioning. Rob Gronkowski, 8 targets, 8 receptions, 90 yards, and 2 touchdowns on Thursday Night Football. He's the top guy at 29 points this week. Gronkowski, he's going to be one of those guys, kind of boom-bust tight end, really touchdown dependent. We'll see how it plays out throughout the season, though, but always seems to come up in the big games, whether it's the first game on Thursday Night Football or the Super Bowl. TJ Hawkinson, 10 targets, 8 receptions, 97 yards, 1 touchdown, 25.7 points, a very solid day for him. I do expect him to have a great season. Travis Kelce, 7 targets, 6 receptions, 76 yards, 2 touchdowns. He ended up with 25.6 points, so Travis Kelce was not the tight end one for once, it seems like, just in a given week, but he's always up there in that top 5, always up there in that top 3. I think last year he was pretty much there every single week besides 2 weeks. And I believe both those games were against the Denver Broncos. Then we move down to Juwan Johnson, 3 targets, 3 receptions, 21 yards, but he did have 2 touchdowns, which really boosted him up here. 17.1 fantasy points. I believe I mentioned him in the waiver wire video this past week as well. He's definitely going to be in there tomorrow to take a look at, but just keep in mind that this was a limited opportunity, but we'll see what he can do going forward. Then last but not least, kind of a guy I was fading, and I'll really want to see how this plays out between him and Zach Ertz this year, and it's Dallas Goedert. 5 receptions, 4 targets, 42 yards, and 1 touchdown. 14.2 fantasy points. Solid day for him overall. We'll see how this shakes out throughout the season. I have not gotten a chance to look at the snap counts from that game yet, but once I do, I'll kind of put a little bit of my thoughts into it as well. And like I already mentioned, there is no other notable performances for tight ends this week. What you see here is what you got from the top 5. Just important to note that both Darren Waller and Mark Andrews do play tonight, so I assume one of them is going to have a good game. So that would probably put one of them in the top 5 or as a notable performer, or even both. But with that being said, that's all I have for today's video. This was the top 5 performers for week 1 in fantasy football. But with that being said, if you are new to my channel, please consider subscribing. Definitely would appreciate it. It really helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, and that's one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your fantasy football teams, helping you with DFS, whether it's NFL or NBA, talking all the NFL news, talking some 2022 NFL draft prospects as we get closer to the 2022 NFL draft. And with that being said, if you are new or current subscribers yet to do so, also hit that notification bell down below. It's going to let you know every single time I post up a new video. And, my format for this season is going to be the Monday is the top 5 performers at each position. Tuesday is the waiver wire video. Wednesday is the Thursday Night Football start and sit video, taking a look at the Thursday Night Football matchup. This week it will be the Washington Football Team and the New York Giants. Thursday is going to be the DFS single game slate for both DraftKings and FanDuel. Taking a look at that. It's going to be an interesting one this week. Then Friday is the dollar store stacks. So that's going to be the cheap quarterbacks that you can stack with a wide receiver or tight end to give you the opportunity to pay up for other guys on the main slate for DFS, or if you want to play them on one of the shorter slates as well. And then last but not least, on Saturday, I had the starts and sits for every single matchup for the remaining 30 teams left to play for the week. So that's the overall structure for the week. Like I said, I put out 6 videos a week. And also check out the Point After podcast on Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on the TNF network. The link to that is down in the description below as well. Julian, myself, and Chris Robin all should be there this week, and we'll be taking a look at the DFS slates for the Sunday night and Monday night football games. But with that being said, that's all I have for today. Once again, hopefully you all enjoyed. And last but not least, special little shout out to each and every one of you watching today's video. Definitely appreciate you taking the time out of your day to watch this video. Definitely means a lot to me, and I hope each and every one of you has a great rest of your day.